Okay, let's get right into it. The European Union has just launched a really big piece of climate legislation. It's called the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or, CBAM for short. It's about to totally change the game for international trade, and we're going to break down exactly what you need to know.
So if your business imports anything into the EU, you're going to want to lean in for this. This isn't some abstract policy idea for the future. The rules are already kicking in, and they have very real consequences for you and your supply chain.
First things first, why is the EU even doing this? I mean, what's the point? To really get a handle on the new rules, we have to understand the problem they're trying to fix.
And that problem has a name: carbon leakage. It sounds a bit technical, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Imagine the EU has these ambitious climate goals, right? So companies making stuff inside the EU have to pay for their carbon emissions. But what if a company could just skip those costs by moving their factory to a country with, let's say, more relaxed environmental laws? Well, that's carbon leakage. The pollution doesn't go away, it just moves somewhere else, and suddenly EU companies are at a huge disadvantage.
And that's exactly where CBAM steps in. It's all about leveling that playing field. The idea is, if companies inside the EU are paying a price for carbon, then companies importing into the EU should too. It makes sure that the environmental cost is part of the equation no matter where in the world the product was made. So how is this all being rolled out? You're probably wondering, okay, when do I need to worry about this? Well, the thing is, it's already started, but, and this is a big but, we're in a special introductory phase right now. You can think of it as a practice run. And here is the most important thing you need to know right now. For the next couple of years, this is all about reporting data. It is not about paying any money. I'll say that again. It's about reporting, not paying, at least not yet. This whole phase is designed to get everybody used to the new system. This timeline lays it all out pretty clearly. The whole thing kicked off on October 1st, 2023. The very first reports were due at the end of January 2024. Now, this reporting-only phase will continue all the way to the end of 2025. But the really big date to circle on your calendar is January 1st, 2026. That's when the definitive period starts, and that's when the actual payments begin.
All right, so who exactly is on the hook for filing these reports? Let's get into the specifics.
The official term in the regulation is the reporting declarant. It sounds complicated, but for most people, it's just the importer. The company actually bringing the goods into the EU. If that company is based outside the EU, then it's their local customs representative who has to handle it. Bottom line, whoever's managing the import is responsible. And what kind of goods are we talking about here? For this first phase, the EU is focusing on a handful of sectors that are known for being carbon intensive. We're talking about cement, electricity, fertilizers, things like ammonia and urea, iron and steel, aluminum and hydrogen. If you're importing anything from these categories, yep, these rules apply to you.
Okay, let's say you've figured out you're one of the ones who needs to report. So, what does that actually mean? What do you have to do? Let's run through the checklist. Every quarter, the process breaks down into 3 main steps. First, and this is the big one, you need to get the emissions data from your producers, the ones located outside the EU. This means you have to be talking to your suppliers. Second, you take that data and calculate the total embedded emissions for the goods you imported. And third, you file your report with all that information.
So what exactly are they looking for in that report? Well, it's pretty detailed. You need the basics, of course, like how much you imported and where it came from. But the real meat of the report is the emissions data. That means the direct emissions from making the stuff, plus the indirect emissions from the electricity they used. And, crucially, you also have to report if any carbon price was already paid back in the country of origin. That could end up reducing your bill down the line. And where does all this paperwork go? Thankfully, they've made this part simple. You don't have to deal with 27 different systems for every EU country. Everything is done through one single central online portal. It's called the CBAM Transitional Registry. Now, you might be thinking, how on earth am I supposed to get this perfect emissions data from my suppliers right away? Well, it seems the EU gets that. They've built in some flexibility. For the first year or so, until late 2024, if you just can't get the actual numbers, the rules let you use default values as a backup. Think of it as a temporary grace period to help everyone get their systems in order. So let's talk about the stakes. What happens if you don't do this, or if you get it wrong? And what does this all mean for the future of how we trade? Let's start with the consequences. Take a look at this number range. That's right, the penalty for failing to report or for filing a bad report is between 10 and 50 euros per ton of emissions that you didn't report. It's definitely designed to make sure everyone takes this seriously.
And that's not all. The fines can actually go up from there if you keep submitting bad reports, or if you just don't report at all for more than 6 months. The message from the EU is pretty clear. Compliance is not a suggestion.
So why have this whole 2-year practice run in the first place? Well, this quote from the regulation itself tells you everything. This isn't just a drill for businesses, it's also a giant data gathering project for the EU. They're using this time to collect all the information they need to fine-tune the system before the permanent rules and the payments go live in 2026.
Which brings us to a final really big question. The EU is the first major economy to try something like this, to directly link its climate policies to its trade rules. It's a massive experiment, and it leaves us wondering, is this just a one-off thing for Europe? Or are we watching the creation of a whole new global standard for how we think about carbon in everything we buy and sell?